Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about the film This Man's Navy from 1945. This is continuing my quest to review as much of William Wellman's filmography as I possibly can, and this is yet another kind of World War II propaganda film, pretty much, but done in a different way than William Wellman's previous World War II propaganda film, which was Thunderbirds. Hollywood liked to kind of make almost every aspect of the military during World War II, and this is about the LTA, or the Lighter Than Air Division in the Navy, which was the blimps that apparently were part of the Navy, even though that sounds like something that should be part of the Air Force, but I don't understand the military that well, so I'm sure to someone in the military that makes sense, but to me, I think air, why wouldn't that be in the Air Force rather than the Navy? But whatever, this part of the Navy is not really featured in that many movies and only pretty much in training films. This is a pretty rare occurrence, and take it to William Wellman to make a film about the Navy where there's not very many boats in it and it's all flying. This film is pretty much a Wallace Beery vehicle, and he wanted to make it because he was a commander in this division in the Navy, and he wanted to make it for his command that he was the commander of, in tribute to them. It's about him, Wallace Beery, who keeps talking about how he has a son when he has no son, and he's kind of known as the old gas bag, the guy who's always like going on and making up stories. And then he parachutes out off of an air balloon during an exercise and onto a farm and finds a young man who very much would like to be in the LTA but can't because he has a bad problem with his leg, has been messed up by a horse. Apparently it's permanent that way. Wallace Beery takes him in and has an agreement where he tells everyone he's his son, and that guy tells everyone that he's his father, so he can compete with another commander who has a son, and he can basically show how he's really cool with his son. Obviously, any film dealing with flight and William Wellman, the wings comparison comes up. This doesn't have that much to do with wings. In fact, it has less to do with wings than Thunderbirds, really, because you still have the male-male relationship, this being a father-son relationship, which I haven't really seen from Wellman, oddly enough. There's no kind of love triangle in it at all, which would be totally weird, which they did kind of do in Thunderbirds. In this one, it's really just a Wallace Beery vehicle and this kid who's kind of going up the ranks of the LTA. One of the reasons I like it more than Thunderbirds is because it's a Wallace Beery vehicle, and I think that makes it work a lot better because its primary focus isn't to show off this part of the Navy, it's to show off and highlight Wallace Beery as much as it is to highlight the LTA. And I think that was kind of what makes this work more than Wellman's previous World War II propaganda film, Thunderbirds. It seems like he kind of got more into This Man's Navy than Thunderbirds. His direction feels a lot more alive, he feels a lot more into it. Now, it's still an assignment film, and in fact, I think the way this ends with the comparison to Ruth Chatterton and Lily Turner is Lily Turner really excels a lot, and it seems like he found a way to have fun. This Man's Navy, he kind of finds a way to have fun, but it still stinks of an assignment picture. It still has a little too much melodrama. It's kind of too long, even though he has some pretty exciting sequences. The opening sequence using a lot of fog. It's typical Wellman where he doesn't want to really show you that much. It has some majesty about it. It has a romance to it. It really opens with this nice fog and the Zeppelin landing, and it really shows how well Wellman used cinematography. He was really a very visual director, even though he'd like to hide things from you, and he really does that in that sequence. And a lot of the action sequences are very thrilling in the way they're cut together and put together to show a real grittiness. Not as much, obviously, as Story of G.I. Joe or Battleground, but a lot more than you expect from a regular propaganda film. And I think because its sole aim wasn't doing that, it was able to theory-wise relieve itself of a lot of that and makes it a lot more fun. And even the funny parts are actually funny. It's not as like kind of bogged down by all that crap. And it definitely feels like Wellman, he could definitely be an assignment director. It seemed like at this point he was not as into being one as he used to be. He's further in his career. This is 45. In some places it feels like he's like, you know what, I'm just gonna make this sequence the best way I can possibly do it, rather than the way that a normal kind of assignment World War II film would do. And there's kind of more of his soul, I think, in this than in Thunderbirds. But it's not an amazing picture. It's not a picture I love or anything. I think the main reason this film got made is because Wallace Beery worked with Wellman on Chinatown Nights, and Beggars of Life back in the 20s, and he found pretty much the best director you could find to do a film like this, and that's William Wellman. And he still shoots aerial sequences better than anyone at the time period. Not as good as Wings, but I think the thing with Wings, everyone brings that up, and every review you can find, there's not many reviews of this movie, but anytime anyone sees This Man's Navy, they're going to bring up Wings. And the thing about Wings is that when you're in that cockpit with those pilots, that's intense, that's gritty, that's a documentary feel. He doesn't really have a documentary feel. It feels like they basically let him have free reign. I'm sure the government forked over some money to get this film made, and they have long tracking shots and sequences that if this was a regular picture, it wouldn't be able to have the kind of budget it has. It's kind of over budget for really what it should be. That was World War II, and they had to, for some reason, highlight every single part of the military. Now, this is much later in the war, so I guess, they're running out of departments at that point. Wellman doesn't flourish. It's not one of his best films as an assignment director. You can kind of tell he's a little sick of doing assignment films at this point. He doesn't have as much love for it. I definitely think, like, if I had to choose between this and Thunderbirds, this would be the better film because it has so much more going for it. And I like Wallace Beery. He even has a little boxing sequence in there, a little champ reference. I don't mind that. And I just like Wallace Beery. I can't get enough of Wallace Beery, frankly. Tom Drake, James Gleason, all those guys, they're great. But basically, Wallace Beery steals the show in a Wallace Beery vehicle. He's kind of a lot of fun. I know this isn't the way he was in the 20s and the 30s, but I still like Wallace Beery at any age, I guess. This is kind of his first actual talkie with Wellman, because Chinatown Nights was actually, the sound was done in post mostly, and Beggars of Life had a sound sequence, but it's lost, and was mostly a silent film. So this is actually really their first total talkie together, which shows how long it had been since they worked together. Wallace Beery could have asked Wellman, and he knew him obviously from before. Wellman did call him Wally Beery. Obviously thought he was a good comedic actor, and I think he really relied on that in this film. And Wallace Beery was happy to do that because he wanted to pay tribute to the guys he served with. And I think he does a good job because it's not totally hammy. It does get a little hammy with the melodrama that they have to put in it for some reason. I think it kind of works at its best when it's a Wallace Beery vehicle and less when it tries to have all this drama for some reason that World War II propaganda films had to have. When his kind of fake son gets an award that he shouldn't and all that stuff, it's just, I feel like that just draws out a plot that doesn't need to be drawn out. I feel like Wellman worked better as a simple economical filmmaker. Doesn't play on his strengths and doesn't play on my attention span strengths, and didn't make for a great movie. I haven't seen every World War II major studio movie where they tried to highlight parts of the military. This isn't a terrible one. I think it's not the worst. I think it's better for Wellman than the past one I reviewed, Thunderbirds. I don't think it's an amazing movie, and it's certainly, Wellman made a lot of great films in the 40s, and this is a lot more sociable than The Oxbow Incident or Yellow Sky. And even the story of G.I. Joe, it's not as subversive and it's not as intelligent and experimental as he possibly could be, which is kind of a shame. If they really let him have at it with this, I think they could have had a much better picture, but I don't know if he would have done it. I think he just did it as a favor, probably, but he still does a decent job, and there's something to be said at how good of an assignment director really Wellman was. It just feels like he's a little sick of it at this point, but he's still a damn good assignment director. He doesn't really get to show quite the range that he could show through other films in the 40s. He can still deliver the kind of picture they want while still clearly having some fun and showing a sliver of how great of a director he really was at this time. So if you have seen This Man's Navy and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to.